producer Liz and head on over to Stark Radio Show on YouTube to see all three of us. Hi, friends. Hello. Hi, everybody. We are live on YouTube and Twitch. I see lots of familiar faces in the chat tonight. Hello, Sylvan. Hello, Leah. Hello, JJ. And hello, Marissa.
Nerd.
Marissa, what's Marissa doing in the comments tonight? What is going on? Well, I'm very sad to inform everyone that Marissa is having the time of her life on vacation without us. So as punishment, she's not on the show. I'm kidding. Marissa's having a great time on vacation, and we will enjoy having her in the comments with us this evening. Oh, there goes Alexis. Tonight is the night of like pure chaos behind the scenes, folks. It's great. Hi, Bunky. Thanks for tuning in. Alexis is back. Hey, we lost you on TikTok too. I don't know what happened. Hold on. We're getting Alexis back. Oh, everyone's being very complimentary. We're all just doing our best this evening. A lot to be said for when you put on lipstick some nights. Okay, Alexis is back. Hold on. Here we go. Welcome, everybody, to a very special episode of our weekly live. We have some news that we're going to drop on you at the end of the episode. So make sure you stick around for the next hour and a half. We're going to talk about what's happening in Marvel and pop culture this week. Maybe let's start with some intros for folks who might be watching with us for the first time or are new to the show. I'm producer Liz on TikTok and Instagram. I talk about PR, pop culture, award season. I do interview breakdowns and interview predictions. And lots to come with the Oscars around the corner. So keep an eye on my account. Things are about to get real spicy. I'm also seeing you can see the ring light in the background. We're off to a really great start tonight. I'm having a great time. Sly, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Sly. I'm a deaf queer person on the internet. You can find me everywhere talking about queer topics, talking about deaf topics, and you can find me yelling about video games on Point in Progress.
Love. Alexis?
I'm Alexis, at Alexis Blake Reads Comics, and I talk about comics and cats and also ER. That's about it.
That's a big change to the intro. Alexis is officially an ER stan account, everybody. Like, ring the bell. It's a big deal.
My favorite thing about Alexis watching ER is Alexis does not like medical dramas, and I notably love medical dramas. And so Alexis will text me, "Hi, ER is stressing me out. Is this a normal medical drama thing, or is this an ER thing?"
I do, quite a bit.
And it goes either way. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, that's just medical dramas. And other times I'm like, that's just ER.
Yeah. We often call Sly like our moral compass of the group. Sly will often like tell like very often Sly's like this is normal or this is not, and Alexis goes exactly what I needed to hear, and we just take it as word and go.
Move on.
That is news to me.
Also, I had a tiny crisis this week, and I put it in the group chat, and Sly responded first, and I was like, thank God. Sly has set the tone for how panicked everyone else is going to be about this situation.
It's true. Perfect. Because I come in too spicy sometimes when something's gone wrong, like on any scale. Mm-hmm. Like Alexis could be like, I misplaced like my car keys, and I'd be like, I'm on my way. I'm gonna get on a plane right now.
Do you have a lawyer?
Do you have a lawyer? Like, I'm gonna get my passport. I'm gonna like empty my bank accounts, and I'm gonna be there in 2 seconds. And then I'm like, that might be a bit of an overreaction, but that's me. All the
like,
time.
Did you check under the bed?
And Marissa's like still asleep usually. And then comes in a few hours later, like, oh, is everything okay?
Yeah. Here's an academic article about losing your car keys.
Oh, I love you all. I missed y'all so much.
Y'all too. This is really the highlight of my week every week. I made a video earlier tonight that I'm going to post on Monday or Tuesday that I have not sent y'all. That's going to make you cry about how much I love our group chat. I'll give you a hint. There's a new trend going around that's like, I'll fuck you up if you mess with Buzz. I did that. You know, it's like, I'm not very strong, but I'll fuck you up if you mess with my friends. I did that for like text in the group chat. It's very wholesome. So coming to my TikTok and Instagram very soon. But okay. Well, we're getting some validation in the chat. Sylvan's saying these are all valid responses. We really give the full picture of the friend group, right? Like you gotta have
balance each other out.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you need someone to go all the way drama. Sometimes someone has to be like, Liz, shut the fuck up. Like, let's be rational about this. And sometimes we're all the way over the scale. Alexis, talk about the shirt. Do you want to plug your sweater real quick? I'm also admiring it this evening.
Yeah, this is my sweatshirt. It is from Ember Cases. I know they do like limited runs of shirts. You can find them on TikTok. They've done a lot of One Direction stuff recently. But it says, I'm with you till the end of the line. And it's funny because every time I wear this, my brother is like, but that was a lie. And I'm like, I know it was a lie, but I still appreciate
I
it
have
anyway.
an important clarification. Does it say I'm with you to the end of the line or till?
This one says till. This is a till. This is a till
Okay.
sweatshirt.
I love a till moment, honestly.
Because it's, you
Yeah.
know,
It's different. It's different.
Yeah, it has the little. It's
Yes.
till,
Yeah.
not two.
Respect.
I think
Respect.
the official line is 2.
It's
But I
2.
like how the entire community went, nah.
Nah.
We're gonna
It's
rewrite
till.
this. Thank you so much. Fanon quotes always better than canon quotes every single time.
I think it's because Bucky is such a drama queen. It makes more sense
Right?
that he would say till. Like,
True. And
like
speaking
his
of Bucky,
Newsies moment.
sorry, I hit my mic. Speaking of Bucky being a drama queen, today is the 1-year anniversary of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier on Disney Plus. So happy birthday. We're going to be talking a little bit about it later in the show, but Marissa is the queen of the Bucky with a cake meme. So we do have to honor the beginning of Marissa's iconic meme era. So we'll be talking all about the show later tonight, but happy birthday to that show and that, effort that brought so many of us closer to the Marvel community and brought Bucky back to the screen. Love. Let's talk about what we've been, I don't want to just say watching because I haven't really been watching a lot this week, but what have we been consuming in media this week other than ER, other than 911, other than
Nice.
No, I'm kidding. We talk about whatever we
Wow.
want. Alexis, why don't you start? Tell us what happened on ER this week.
I was about to say I have only consumed ER this week. So I have been working with a new person at work, and I thought I was doing a really good job at seeming normal, and apparently I was not. Because when we got to the ER conversation, she asked me when I started watching, and I was like, oh, like a month ago. And she was like, well, they must be short seasons. And I was like, no, they're like 22, 23 episodes. And she's like, in less than a month, you have watched 6 seasons that are 23 episodes long. And I was like, well, I skipped 4 of the episodes.
That makes it better.
Yeah. Finally, I got to season 12. I actually found this really interesting review of ER. And I think it needs to be said that it's really like an interesting time capsule of media. Because it ran for so long, like you can see media change through the seasons of ER, right? So season 1 to the end of season 5 are like your groundbreaking medical drama. And then like season 6 to like season 10 are like medical drama with drama, but not a lot of drama. And then seasons 11, I'm assuming to the end, are like batshit crazy telenovela level nonsense. I don't even think anybody is injured anymore. Like it's just like complete chaos. I was really stressed in season 11, but I finally got to season 12, which is notable because season 12 is when Abby and Luca get back together and have baby Joe. So
spoiler.
Today, spoiler for a show that came out 20 years ago. So today I got through Joe successfully being born, which I was real stressed about. And then I decided I couldn't watch anymore before our show because what if something really tragic happened in the next episode? But anyway, that's ER. And there's all new characters. I still don't know anybody's name. But yeah, that's it.
I'm going to pick up on that note because I had a similar experience this week of like lose-lose situations of do I stop now while I'm kind of okay with what's happening? Or do I fulfill my hunger to figure out what the F is going on and keep going even though I have things to do? But not with TV. I found my sorry self an almost 500,000 word fic on Monday. And I finished it at 4:30 in the morning, Friday. So that was my entire week. I did not watch anything. I had a very sad playlist that set the mood for the entire experience. 60 chapters. There's a 5-part epilogue coming. If you DM me on Instagram, I'll send you the link, but it's very sad. It is very sad, but very well written. So I lost my entire week to that. I regret nothing. I would do it again. Some confirmation coming in the chat from Marissa. Liz has been losing her mind. It's true. It's been a weird week to be my friend. Many playlists have been made. I'll talk about them later in the show. Sylvan says she's proud of me. Thank you, Sylvan. I am also proud of me. This is why I'm not a part of book talk. Okay. I love book talk. I'm deep in book talk. I love watching the videos. But when I find a story I like, literally nothing else in my life happens until the story is done. Like that's kind of why I like TV, because it forces a stop. But if the book just keeps going, so do I. So
I will say Sylvan, I'm calling Sylvan out, is one of those fantastic people that can read a chapter and put something down. And then I'm like, no. Like, you don't get to take a break in the fanfic that I sent you. You have to read it all. Your life has to stop right now to read the whole thing so we can then discuss it.
If you
I have
don't
ADHD, I'll stop mid-sentence and walk away for hours and then reopen my phone and be like, oh, I was reading this.
Yeah. That'll happen if I get a text message and I'll like just go answer it and then forget for a while. There was also 2 notable moments where very rightfully, you know how a plot progresses? You know how a plot naturally progresses, but you still like the point of the plot you were in and you don't necessarily want it to be over. So twice when I was reading the book, I realized the plot was about to progress and I wasn't ready for it, so I just stopped. And I shouldn't have. Like very much like middle of sentence or middle of a chapter or something. And I'd be like, no, I'm not ready to go that way yet. I still want to be here, so I'm just going to pretend I didn't see that and call it a night. Yeah, that's also how I read. Yeah. If you DM me on Instagram, I'll fill you in on what the fic was if you also want to lose a week of your life to a great read. Sly, what about you?
So last week I talked about Dollface season 1. It was very good. I finished season 2. Also very good. No gore and Vishnik, so lose a point there. But I really enjoyed. This is not a Sly show. This is not something I would typically watch. I watched it because I'm madly in love with Kat Dennings. And that's basically it. But I actually really enjoyed my time with it. There were a couple times I had to like pause and walk away. But in general, I had a blast with this, which I was not expecting. So I know I'm a couple weeks late, but Dollface season 2, very good.
I've heard good things about it.
Kat Dennings was also on. Oh, what?
No, go ahead.
Interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
No, Kat Dennings was also on ER this week, by which I mean the season that I binged this week. And I was very excited because of Sly. I was like, oh my God, Kat Dennings is on this show.
I will say, like, because WandaVision was the first thing that I like watched in the MCU seriously, and that's like falling in love with Kat Dennings on WandaVision is a majority of the reason for me joining the MCU fandom. So like,
you know what? Honestly, not the worst reason to join the MCU fandom. I'm trying to get our timer up so we can transition to some fun rants of the week. Does anyone else want to try explaining this very chaotic game, or shall I give it a go once again?
I mean, I can go for it.
Do it. You go for it. Yes.
Our rant segment is a game where we each pick a topic from our week that we want to talk about and have to explain our rants in 30-second increments, cycling between the 3 of us. It ensues much chaos, much interruptions, and a fun time. Enjoy.
So here's something that we didn't talk about ahead of time, so we're going to figure it out live with all of you. Welcome. We don't have Marissa. So would everyone like an extra 30 seconds tonight? Or shall we attempt to just go with 3 people, which I think is going to make it even more chaotic. So I'm used to having a minute and a half before I have to go again, but it's going to go by quick this evening. What do y'all want to do?
I think we can do it just minus the 4th person.
Okay, let's see. I'm definitely going to mess this up, but it will be good. We all have our rants. Do we want to introduce our rants before we launch into it so people know what we're talking about? I'm talking about Andrew Garfield winning the Critics' Choice Super Awards Best Superhero Award. Tongue twister.
I'm talking about the courtship and how I'm experiencing this show because it's pretty chaotic.
My rant is going to be more a listicle, but I am talking about an actor that I think should be included in the MCU.
Beautiful. All right. Let me get a little sip of water before I launch into this.
I wonder who the actor is.
No one could guess.
All right. We ready?
Let me fix my ponytail. Okay.
So there's a lot of talk and controversy right now about Andrew Garfield winning Best Superhero over Tom Holland for the new Spider-Man movie that came out. If you have not seen that that's a spoiler, that's not my problem at this point. We've talked about it on the show. It's everywhere. I understand why people are mad about it. It's Tom Holland's movie. He's the main guy. Andrew Garfield should not have won over Tom. But this is actually a trend that we see in award season all the time. So I completely understand why Andrew was picked over Tom for this one.
So my best friend from high school and I bonded over our mutual love of Jane Austen, all things Regency era, etc., etc. So when a new dating show advertised as based on Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice came out, you betcha we were gonna dive into this. And I'm not watching the show. I'm living the show vicariously via Shelby's Snapchats to me while she's watching the show.
The timer stopped for me, so I don't know where I am.
Go.
But, okay, this week some casting was announced for Madam Web, and it started this conversation about actors that had been in non-MCU Marvel projects that should branch over into MCU projects. And I was really upset that Goran Visnik was not on this list. Mark Miller from Elektra. So I'm going to outline characters that I think he should play in the MCU. So the first character would be...
I need to let go of this for a second because I just want to hear the list. So, yes, Andrew was spectacular in this movie. Point, I understand. We also have to understand that sometimes people win awards based on merit and history and performance rather than just on the singular performance that they depict in a film. So could this have been an Andrew Garfield deserves recognition for a character that he played and was always snubbed for? Potentially.
So the plot of this show is they're taking a woman who's basically like the Bachelorette, right? And she's on this dating show that is inspired by Pride and Prejudice. Here's the thing. None of her dresses are Regency appropriate. The show has so much touching. The first episode, spoiler alert, has a kiss, which if you know anything about the Regency era, the Georgian era, that's a big no-no. Come on, fundamentals here.
So firstly, I think he should play a sweater salesman, and I think his job across the universe should be to sell sweaters to all of the important superheroes. I think his family immigrated here when he was really young, and he comes from a long line of knitters and sweater salesmen. Secondly, I think in some alternate universe, he should play somebody that worked for the TVA that went rogue, that is now trying to chase them through
God,
time
I'm
and
so
space.
mad I have to follow this segment. Okay, so yes, sometimes people win awards based on more things than just a singular performance. Plus, Andrew Garfield had a great performance. Do I think that this is a, knock on Tom Holland? Yes. But do I think Andrew Garfield was done horribly wrong when he was in The Amazing Spider-Man in terms of the press and the coverage he received? Yes. So, from a PR perspective, I get it. Unfortunately,
Okay, so ignoring the fact that all of her dresses aren't Regency appropriate, the rest of the costuming pretty good. The guys look fantastic, except for all of them need etiquette lessons. None of these men know how to stand correctly, and it kind of cracks me up that they're so awkward in how they're trying to like stand or whatever. But anyways, we're watching the show and we're getting really into it, but we don't know who any of these characters are. So in my inspired genius, I made a spreadsheet for a show I'm not watching.
I also think he should play Laura Barton's real husband. I don't think she and Clint are actually married. I think she is married to a county ER doctor who then is going to become. Don't make me laugh! The doctor for all of the superheroes. Okay. Lastly, but most importantly, Alpine's babysitter. Alpine needs a cat sitter.
Liz, you're up.
I didn't expect you to think it was that funny.
In conclusion, I think we're getting Amazing Spider-Man 3 in some capacity. It'll be in the future. I think it's going to connect to Miles Morales. I'll finish this rant another time. I want to hear more about the spreadsheet. Continue.
Okay, so in the spreadsheet, we got their names, their occupations, boring stuff. And then I made a column of miscellaneous details to remind us, like, who are these characters, right? So some of them are like, strong start, but nothing stands out. Or some of them are, I think he's Italian, question mark. And there are two who are so unnotable that literally all the description is who, question mark. We also have our opinion ranked from 1 to 5. Very
So
divisive.
I think that there are times that Alpine can't go into battle, like when the Bro Mafia has glitter bomb arrows, and that would be a good time for him to be her cat sitter. I also would like to see him play Happy Man with Living Family. I think this could be a really important role across universes where he is just married and everyone is alive. I think it would be very like not true to his usual casting, so it would be a reach for him. The end.
That's enough. That's enough. So if it was
man a wife,
just happy. Yeah. Just don't unalive his wife one time, please.
So if it wasn't clear, we don't tell each other our rants ahead of the show, like at all. We have a line that's like, do you have a rant? High level, what is it? Just so we know we're not all talking about the same thing. If that wasn't clear before tonight, I think it is.
My favorite is today, a little behind the scenes. In our show doc today, Alexis's rant is blank. And before we started, Alexis goes, "My rant is a secret, except for Sly, because I texted them about it earlier."
But all I said was, can I do a list of roles that Gordon Vishnick could play in the MCU? Or is that more insane than I usually am?
And I said, that's perfect. I love you.
So it was only a secret to Liz.
Yeah.
And based on how that went, I feel like maybe that should be how we approach this moving forward. You two discuss and don't tell me. And then we'll see how it goes.
No one knew I wanted him to be a sweater salesman. That was new information.
That was an inside thought that became an outside thought.
Yeah, that was an inside thought that became an outside thought.
Oh, okay. Fun fact about Liz. I'm asthmatic, and I remember that once an episode. In other news, the Miss Marvel trailer dropped this week.
Can I hard
Sharp
real
left
quick?
turn.
That was a lovely try to get us back on track, but I need the people to know something about our friendship. Is that I am a notable Nova Scotia fan, and last week I made a comment that was so ridiculous about the history of Nova Scotia that's incorrect that Liz nearly had an asthma attack.
It's true. It's true. Sly picked up one historic event with one cartoon character, and it created a conspiracy theory that I have not shut up about for the past week. So if you want to know more about that, you can DM us on Instagram and we'll fill you in.
With that, Miss Marvel.
Miss Marvel. This is what happens when Marissa's not here to I think we'd still be like this if Marissa was here tonight. Oh. Marissa, if you want to chime in, now's your chance. I'll pull up your next comment. Miss Marvel, trailer dropped. What a moment. So exciting. How are we all feeling about this show based on the trailer? Who wants to start? Alexis, you're giving face. You're serving.
I don't ever like to start. I feel positively about the vibes, but I continue to be concerned about the way the show is going to handle itself.
Everything.
Everything. Thank you.
Yeah. I am pretty similar. I am here for the vibes. I really enjoyed the trailer. It was giving me, everything I wanted. And I feel like I don't want to put any criticism on this show based on this trailer without knowing where they're going with it, what they want the vibe to be. I think they gave us just enough to be like, okay, we have some questions. There's some questionable stuff going on, but we don't know exactly where they're going. We don't know exactly what the vibe is. And so right now, I'm just all hell yeah on this. I'm just very excited, very positive, and I will leave the critiquing to people who know what they're talking about.
I'm couldn't have said it better myself. I'm feeling on a very similar wavelength. I feel like our jobs to do this show and the space we're trying to do justice is to do the research, bring in the experts, bring in the people that feel represented by the media, and try and have constructive conversation about pros and cons of what Marvel is doing to try and be representative and try to be inclusive and try to create diverse, non-sexist media. I feel like at our core, that's something that we try and do when we talk about the new Marvel projects coming out. I feel like we're not in a place yet to dig super deep into some of what could be a problem with this show. And I don't want to give Marvel credit because that's just something I'm against in general, is giving credit like when I don't know if it's due yet. However, what I will say was after watching Turning Red last week and seeing how joyous it was to watch a coming of age story of a teenage girl, seeing the Miss Marvel trailer, I felt like we're still riding that like wave of good energy, perhaps for me. And it just felt nice to see another story coming to the forefront that's coming of age, but a girl finding herself and dealing with the very real life of being a teenage girl and all the things that come with that, while also having this extraordinary situation and circumstances put upon you. So I'm excited for that reason. I think that I'm hopeful that this show will accomplish some positive things, despite what it might not get right. And I think that it will be a project that we will all learn from. And I think that's always a constructive thing. And with that said, let's talk about what we can talk about, which is how they have, if you've been in the Marvel TikTok and fandom community over the past few months, you've seen that there's been so much conversation around Miss Marvel's powers and how it's different from the comics to what we're seeing in the show. So I just wanted to open the floor to that conversation and pass it over to Alexis. Do you want to fill us in on some of what this discrepancy is and what we might expect from this project?
Yes. So there's kind of a lot here, and I'm just going to kind of give an overview, and I'm not telling anybody how to feel, but I'm just going to tell you what I know, right? In the comics, Miss Marvel has what we would refer to as embiggening powers, and the word was actually added to the dictionary in 2018, in part because of its prevalence in the Miss Marvel run. She is an Inhuman in the comics, and those powers look pretty similar to what we see from Mr. Fantastic, right? In which she can grow and shapeshift and get bigger. It's really fascinating to me that when we first started seeing media about the show, like when we started seeing those first promo pictures, there was a really big conversation at that time about the power change and why it was happening and how we should feel about it. Post the trailer, when I looked for those same articles, my first 2 or 3 pages of Google search results were just like, here is her new powers, we're accepting them and we're moving on. And that makes me a little bit nervous. I think everyone that watches this show knows that we feel that media can be positive and still be critiqued, that we can accept that our powers are changing and still critique why that happened or what they chose to do with that. So in regards to her powers being changed, I think there are kind of 2 conversations to be had. And one is about pretty powers and the role her powers played in her story, and one is more of a cultural relationship to her powers. So Miss Marvel, in context in the book, refers to other superheroes' powers as pretty powers. And the author went on record and said that her intention was to basically draw awareness to this thing that happens in comics where female characters have powers, but they don't conflict with their appearance. So anytime a female superhero has powers, she is still pretty, usually petite, right? If we look at like Natasha and the fact that she was exposed to the super soldier serum, she still doesn't look like Captain America. She looks petite and fit and like a very glamorous spy. When we look at like the 2010 depiction of She-Hulk, she was a Hulk, but she was very well endowed. She had very long hair. She had an hourglass waist, right? She was still drawn to be very pretty. And so that by calling out these other powers and being like, they're pretty powers, that kind of allowed them to use Miss Marvel's embiggening powers to draw them on the page in a way that looked a little less pretty. The other piece there is that her powers are very like big and awkward and weird, and that suits this young woman's coming of age story, right? Like she's going to high school, she's going through puberty, she's learning who she is, right? And these powers kind of reflect that awkwardness. There's also a really important storyline in those comics where she chooses to model her appearance after Carol Danvers. So she is appearing to the world as a white blonde woman rather than herself. And she has to come to terms with presenting her own identity to the world. Right. So by changing her powers into something that's like purple and blue and sparkly and magic, it not only looks a little prettier and more stereotypically feminine, but it also runs the risk of kind of removing those other important story pieces. The other situation, right? The kind of cultural implication is where I give the disclaimer that I think with this show, it is very important to listen to members of the represented community when they talk about these issues. I think it's important to listen to members of the community when they talk about these issues. I think it is equally important not to assume every woman of color is a member of the Muslim community. And I think it's also important not to assume that every member of that community has the requirement of telling you how to feel about it. That being said, there were a lot of conversations around the time Miss Marvel came out, many of which made their way into academic publications about the really intentional storytelling that Miss Marvel did to shine light on Muslim and cultural issues that would have affected Miss Marvel. There's one really or particularly great article about how the way she embraces and doesn't embrace her femininity kind of shines light on more stereotypical views of Muslim masculinity. There are some really great public or scholarly publications about immigration and what that looks like in her story and how her story has kind of shined a light on that. There is a plot in the comics where she gets a bracelet that's been handed down through women in her family, like through the generations. And the bracelet dates all the way back to the 40s, kind of in the curve of the Palestine-India conflict, right? This is a bracelet that we saw in the trailer, and it appears in the trailer that the magic is coming from the bracelet. there were some really interesting conversations that I saw happen online, on Tumblr, and on blogs, and on Twitter by members of that community who are offended that a comic that paid such careful attention to the way that they were telling stories about this group of people has decided to use magic, which is something that is frowned upon both religiously and culturally, and has a really negative connotation in that culture. I saw somebody that basically said that they felt like they were kind of like throwing that in the face of a culture that they had tried to properly represent. So I think there are also some kind of cultural considerations when we're talking about switching her power from something that was kind of inhuman-y and seemed to come from within her to something that appears to be more cosmic. I will say that the final little baby piece is that we need to ask why they chose to change them. And if that is because they thought it was more reflective of things they had already introduced in the MCU and they thought they would be easier to follow, that's great. If they chose to change them because they didn't want her to be involved with the Inhuman show, which is now on Disney Plus, okay. If they chose to change them because they thought they would be too similar to Mr. Fantastic's powers and he is being introduced to the MCU, then I think we have a problem. And that has been a big part of the conversation. I don't think you get to sacrifice the story of a young woman of color for a white man's story that's already been told twice.
Mm-hmm.
That is all I have to say.
I think that there's also room here, and I'm just playing off of a point you've already said, like to think about this show in relation to questions we can ask after the show is done, right? Like there's a lot we could assume right now, but my questions are going to come in after the show is over and we can start seeing, well, have they changed the superpowers of other new characters they're introducing? Like, is She-Hulk, which is coming out in the fall, I think, going to have like some big drastic change from how She-Hulk is presented in the comics? Are other characters that we're going to see introduced maybe in like the movies coming out later this year going to have drastic changes? And if so, perhaps there's a bigger conversation around like why a lot of new people are being introduced and there's a lot of changes happening. If Miss Marvel is the first, it could be hard to pin an entire like cinematic shift on like the first thing that comes out. And I feel like that was something that WandaVision really suffered from because it was the first TV show. It got a lot more criticism than once we had a couple TV shows to compare to and we could go back and say, oh, WandaVision was actually spectacular because now we've seen what less great Marvel TV shows look like. It actually ranked quite highly. So I feel like I feel like our opinions as like a community we should learn from the lessons of when did those shows come out? Last year? Yeah. Learn from the lessons of last year and how some things with time become better and become worse. And perhaps we'll be able to say like, oh, well, this was part of something bigger that perhaps no one had context on at the time. Or perhaps we'll be able to say, no, it was just her and it's even worse than we thought when we first watched it. So I'm also holding space for that in this conversation. And I feel like throughout all of 2022, with all the projects that are coming out, I'm going to try and hold some space for time to age things to the point where criticism can be more grounded, I suppose.
I think a very important perspective to look at all the upcoming projects is especially with the rise in telling stories of characters that are traditionally Inhumans. How are they relating that to the Inhuman stories they've already told, and how are they adjusting that for the like movie universe part, right? Because my experience with Kamala Khan as a character is my first experience was Marvel's Avengers, which, yes, is a bad video game, but the stories they're telling are actually pretty great. And she was the main character of the first campaign. So we really got to dive in to her story through that game. And, the Terrigen crystals, the Inhuman experience was a big part of that story. And the way Marvel seems to be marketing these shows of these characters that have been traditionally Inhumans seems to be distancing from that. which I don't know how to feel about, but I think they're missing out. And I thought that Miss Marvel would be a great first start to starting to introduce the themes and concepts and terminology around Inhuman stories to the general audience. And it seems like that's not what they're doing. So that's a little disappointing.
It does open like another question that I have that I'm just stating, and I don't have an answer, and we might not even get an answer, right? But what is the base that they're going to ground the show on? Like, I feel like that was not answered by this trailer. At least going into Hawkeye, I felt like I understood some of the baseline of what they wanted to accomplish with the story they wanted to tell, even if we didn't have like all of the details of like how important certain people would become or whatever. I also feel like with What If, we had a very clear baseline for what If was going to be going into the show. And I feel like I don't have that with Miss Marvel right now. And it kind of worries me because it's either we might have a big, sharp left turn, to go back to that phrase, like coming our way that's going to make us have to reevaluate what we think of this show. Or it could mean the show itself doesn't know what it's grounded in, which we've also seen from Marvel shows in the past. So that's a question that I'm leaning into the show with. I have one other point that I want to raise. It's something that I'm going to be watching over the next few weeks. So I invite everyone to consider this along with me. And we'll certainly be talking about this as the show is airing. But I feel like, from my perspective, we have a problem as a community. When the Phase 1 Marvel movies were coming out and the Phase 2 Marvel movies were coming out, no one was saying, well, who is Thor in relation to Tony Stark? Well, who is Captain America in relation to Tony Stark? Who is like this new male character and how is he different from Tony Stark? It was accepted that men could have different stories.
Right.
There was obviously some comparison because they were brand new Marvel projects and we were trying to figure out like this new era of Marvel. Like that I understand. But there's a conversation to be had about how, to some analysts, the stories of women have to be told in proximity to one another. So what is the story of Miss Marvel and like the direct comparisons to Captain Marvel or to Natasha or to Wanda or to Gamora or these other strong women we've seen in the MCU? And how much analysis are we going to see that's only done in proximity? Can we see this story told on its own two legs, and can we analyze it in its own lane without needing the proximity to other Marvel women? Now, where this changes is like if Carol Danvers shows up in episode 1 and is like, hey, I'm going to be a major character in this show, then we have to obviously do some talk around like analyzing why those two characters have proximity and why that's necessary for the story to be told. But I am already seeing what I don't want to see from this community, which is people only talking about Miss Marvel in comparison to Carol Danvers. And I think that that's very dangerous when we're talking about a coming of age story, because women do not come of age only in proximity to the other women and older women around them. Women come of age because, period, because they do, because it's our right, because it's literally how life works. So I think we also as a community, and I include myself in this, need to like take a breath and allow the show to have some breathing room to exist in its own right without considering these larger implications, or else we're going to drown the story before we even get into it.
One of the things that I really liked in the trailer was the way they depicted like her fascination with fandom and like the joy that she had. And I think it's been an interesting conversation recently because there's been a lot of commentary about Liz's new favorite movie, Turning Red, and Four Town, and the way
nobody
the way I have seen a certain population respond to that versus a way that I have seen women who grew up around this time respond to that have been very differently, or have been very different, right? Where there seems to be this understanding of like I saw a lot of analysis of like which person liked which Four Town member, and like wasn't it kind of weird that they based their whole identity off of whatever? And to me, that part of the commentary is just like continuing to frown upon female joy. Like, women get to be joyous. Women, I think there are a lot of people that can relate to basing your life after a character you liked or a musician you liked or fandom, right? And that the reason, for those of you who have not gone through the pseudo-scholarly publication tab on AO3, I highly recommend it. But there are a lot of essays about the way that fan fiction was frowned upon and was seen as this like embarrassing thing, and like how that would have been different if it was dominated predominantly by cis straight men rather than women, right? But because women were the ones writing fanfic and women were primarily the ones reading fanfic, it became this like, like that's shameful, that's embarrassing that you love something enough to do that. So I do think the show is kind of setting itself up for an interesting commentary about female joy, and I'm excited to see the way the show does that because I think the comic did that particularly well.
And I'm excited to talk about that on this show. And talk about joy in general. I feel like joy is an underrated theme of the MCU. Yes. I feel like when we get stories that have snippets of joy, I say this as a scarred Bucky Barnes fan who wants a wrath of joy. When I get a little bit of joy from Marvel, I eat it like breakfast. I am so excited. So I'm so excited to talk more about Miss Marvel in the coming weeks and to keep our eyes peeled and watching the analysis happening around us and trying to provide a platform where we can all have nuance and conversation and learn from one another every week. Is there anything else we want to talk about with Miss Marvel before we move on? I think we have some pictures for this segment or another segment, Alexis.
Do I want to say what?
No, they're for our next thing we wanted to talk about, I think, which let's move to our under the radar segment of the show. This is some time we dedicate to talking about conversations that we think are significant that we're not seeing a ton of talk around. And we're going to talk about some of our highs and lows of the week. Alexis, you have some interesting commentary to share around Nightwing.
We talked about this being like Bucky's birthday episode, and I was like, yeah, but it's also going to be like a thing because I have a lot of like heavy nuanced stuff to get through. But Nightwing issue 90, this is a run that's been going on since 2016, came out like this week-ish, and I have seen a lot of commentary about something very interesting that happened in this comic. I will just point out again that Nightwing number 90, which Liz, I actually think you have a picture of the cover, is a male-led book. Yes, so this is a book led by a male character who titles the book, and his name is Nightwing. That's important. Okay, so
just very quickly, I'm going to let everyone know watching on TikTok, you can come over to YouTube and see what Alexis is talking about. We have some lovely graphics. If you click on producer Liz and you click on the YouTube button, you can come join everyone that's watching and hanging out with us. And again, hi everyone in the comments. Keep your comments coming so we can share and chat back with you as we go along. Okay, continue.
So a while ago, a hot second ago, Gail Simone coined the term women in refrigerators, where they were referring to this problematic theme and trope in media, but specifically in comics, where female characters are abused or unalived to further the story of male characters. This is something that I still see a lot of debate about, like whether like male characters can be fridged, et cetera, right? The point here is that it was a minority group, so in the case of comics, women, being removed from the story so that the majority group, in comics case, men, could further their own story. And the term came about because there was a Green Lantern run where his girlfriend was unalived and shoved in a refrigerator, okay? In the DC side, in the Batman verse, there is a very prolific comic run, The Killing Joke, in which Barbara Gordon is attacked and at the time paralyzed. She is currently not paralyzed. That's a story about ableism for another time. But that happened to move the story of like 6 male characters forward, right? Like anybody adjacent to Batman that was a man, their story was moved forward by that. So in this issue of Nightwing, the issue that belongs to a male character, Barbara Gordon was stuck in the back of a refrigerated van. And there should be a picture in there somewhere, Liz, but she calls it out and says, no, the other one.
Oh,
she
sorry.
says,
This one?
they've fridged me to get to you, right? Nightwing, they're after me or after you. They fridged me to get to you. And they've put her in this refrigerated van. She then fights her way out of the van, which is the next photo, and she rescues herself. And this comic is getting a lot of positive acclaim. There's a lot of conversation about, oh, how great it was that they played tribute to the women in refrigerator story in the current issue of Nightwing, titled after a male, in the year of our Lord 2022. What is fascinating about this is what no one is talking about is that Marjorie Liu told a very similar story in Black Widow 2010. This was a Black Widow mini series. Name of the Rose is how a lot of people refer to it. It was a mini series because at the time, Marvel did not feel that Black Widow sold enough books to title her own run, even though she had been around longer than some of the male characters that got their own books. And in this issue that also included 3 male characters because they thought it would sell more comics, Natasha is kidnapped. She's stripped out of her clothes and she is tied to a chair in a walk-in freezer where she is then interrogated by mob bosses. I think there may be a photo.
There is. I'm just going to let everyone know. We'll put it up for a second. It's a little bit graphic. So if you don't want to see some gore, you can, and I'll let you know when the photo's gone, but we're going to put it up briefly. Yeah. Here it is. Very much in a fridge.
Yes, very much in a fridge. And she
hold it down.
Fights,
so if your eyes are closed, you can reopen them.
You can open them back up and see my beautiful face. So she fights her way out of the refrigerator. She steals somebody's coat. And as she opens the freezer door, Bucky as Captain America, Hawkeye, and Logan, who were in the comic to sell books, apparently, are standing at the door waiting for her, joking about the fact that she rescued herself. And what I find interesting is that this happened in 2010. And when you look up articles even now about this book, there are a couple scholarly publications, but largely what you see are popular articles about how this went too far in making a feminist statement. That Black Widow didn't need to go that far to tell a refrigeration story. Did it really matter? Et cetera, et cetera. So what I find interesting about the Nightwing appearance is that I think you could claim that that was also included in Nightwing to bring a claim to the book, to sell more books about a male character. I don't know that that storyline would have received the same acclaim and would receive the same popular opinion about this if it was in a Barbara Gordon book. If it was like Barbara Gordon and she fought her way out of a refrigerator in her own book, I don't think it would receive the same amount of conversation or receive the same amount of acclaim as Black Widow did or didn't when it came out in 2010. And I think the other thing that is really fascinating is that all of I saw several influencers or several content creators talk about this. And they were like, oh, what an interesting story to tell. Yay. But it's the year of our Lord 2022. And I feel like we should be so done with women in refrigerators that this storyline should no longer hold weight. But it does. And that's a problem. It's a problem that this happened before 2010, that we addressed it in 2010. We've addressed it several times since then. And still in 2022.
Over a decade later.
Yes, we are still talking about women in refrigerators and letting Barbara Gordon fight her way out of a refrigerated truck. And it's great for Barbara Gordon. I'm proud of her. But I think it would be different if it was not included in a book titled after a male character. So there you go.
Sometimes something I think about is why are we applauding something, right? Because I think that if we're thinking about current context, it can feel easy to applaud something because it's better. But if you look a little bit bigger, if you open your gaze to the universe and you think a little bit wider than that, you can sometimes see, wait, the whole context might be wrong to begin with. So even though this might seem applause-worthy, there's something much bigger happening that we should be critical about. And I think this is a perfect example of that. Why are we applauding a refrigeration reference when there's so many more problems to talk about why that had to exist in the first place and how we got to the point where that joke could be made or that reference could be made? And I feel like, again, as a community, it's something that we can all do a better job at thinking about when we're looking at media and looking at comics and having these very nuanced, very intricate conversations about representation and thinking about, do you applaud something because this moment might seem different or better or some kind of moving along a scale of progress? Or are we looking at a patriarchal structure and applauding work within a patriarchal structure? To me, Alexis, you said this perfectly. I'm only repeating what you've said. Like, this is an example of, well, we shouldn't have to make these references at all. Like, they have happened. It is part of the history of this, but we should be thinking about a future where this is not even a plot line anymore. This should be a moment of the past that we have learned from and grown from and scaled our stories from. Something to consider, especially with the future Marvel projects coming up. I worry about this a lot with Multiverse of Madness. I worry about this a lot with I have a lot of worries about Multiverse of Madness and its representation of female characters, women characters. And that's one of my biggest worries, is that we're going to get caught in applauding moments as opposed to thinking about their wider implication and how we got to that moment to happen. Sly?
All of that. Very well said. Hard agree.
I like this comment from JJ. I also think people use playing and undermining tropes as evidence that the problem is over.
Mm-hmm.
T. Very, very
Sure.
much. I completely agree with that.
I do think, especially in this case, going off of what JJ said, it's kind of ironic because they did have to remove Barbara Gordon from her ongoing story so she could fight her way out of a refrigerated truck and make a joke about being refrigerated, right? Like, there are a lot of other great things that I'm sure Barbara Gordon could be doing with her time, but she's still, like, in making this joke about being refrigerated so she could help Nightwing by telling him they were after him because she was refrigerated. She was still removed from her own story to do that.
T. Yep. I am grateful that you've brought this forward, because I feel like that's something that I know for me, I've shied away from, like, trying to talk about these big structural problems, because I feel like when I look at every single Marvel project that came out in 2021, you could have that conversation about every single project in its own capacity and how every single show was applauded for things that related to bigger systemic and in some cases, not all cases, patriarchal issues that we should be debunking, period. And it's going to feel like beating a dead horse at some point if we keep talking about it over and over and over again. But that doesn't negate how that conversation's still needed. And I think, like I've said, moving into projects coming out this year, we're going to see, unfortunately, a lot of that theme, I think, coming out. Sly, I feel like I'm going to try and segue to you here, so forgive me if it doesn't quite work. I feel like this is a great segue, though, to what you want to talk about with 911 Lone Star. I feel like there's, like, some crossover here with some of the spicy tea from the 911 fandom.
Okay. Yeah, okay. I need to give everybody here some context on 911 and who these people are before I get into talking about a recent article, how it was presented, and how people reacted to it. So, in the 911 verse, there's two shows. There's OG and there's Lone Star. OG is on Monday, starting the second half of season 5, and Lone Star is on season 3 currently. These are both, they have the same showrunner. It's a guy called Tim Minear, and recently we got news that both shows got new co-showrunners. What does that mean? We don't really know yet, but they're different people. So Tim Minear is, like, the big dude in charge of all these stories, and then each show now has an additional co-showrunner. In Lone Star, we have a representation of a queer MLM relationship. In 911, we have a representation of two male characters who are very close friends. And
History would say.
We're going to talk about them today. So the two
Best
characters
friends.
are Buck and Eddie. They're best friends. Their ship name is Buddy. So you'll often hear me referring to Buddy to reference the two of them together. All right. All of that to say, there are very few journalists who have like regular beats on specific shows, right? Like you're only going to see like 2 or 3 people writing about a show while it's running. In the 911 verse, one of those people is a journalist by the name of Max Gow, who I adore. He's doing great work. I really appreciate what he's doing. He had an article come out that had a very strong reaction in the community yesterday. So I just want to walk y'all through how this was set up. So Max tweets out, I have an interview with Tim Minear. Questions like, what do you want to talk about? What do you want to hear about? Later, he said, change of plans. I have an interview with the new co-showrunner. And so he sits down, does this interview, looks at the material he got, and goes, I have enough content here for 2 articles. So he tweets out, I'm making this into 2 articles, one focusing on your favorite dynamic duo, or whatever he said, and the other talking about the episode that premieres on Monday. In a follow-up to that tweet, he says, I don't want to get anyone's hopes up about the first article. I have an extended window of time with Kristen, the new showrunner, and I asked her thoughts on Buck and Eddie's dynamic. So that's what we got. If you didn't see that before seeing the information about the article, I understand it's Twitter, it's a crazy place, but that's how the article was set up. Don't get your hopes up. I asked her questions. This is the response I got from her. Yesterday, Max posts the article. And it's called...
I wish we had a sound effect for the way you just said that. It's like, I feel like we need like a dun dun dun.
Dun, dun, dun. It's on TV Guide. It's titled 911 Bosses on Buck and Eddie's Dynamic. Quote, family doesn't always look the way you think it's going to. And, Max does this thing. It's a great article. Go read it. He references an interview he had with Tim Minear at the end of season 4. So post 414, post it's in my will if I die, Christopher will be looked after by you. Big set piece buddy moment, right? In which Tim said, they're very good friends. He wants to make sure his kid is taken care of. That's like Eddie's only motivation is ever his son. Like that's it. That's the character choice they're going for, right? So now with the new showrunner, Max asked her what her thoughts were about this dynamic, and she had a lot of interesting points about how they relate. And some of the great quotes are, as a woman who has amazing deep relationships with other women in my life that are platonic, I personally have always seen them as a great friendship. Which, okay.
Can I just say, any statement that starts with as a fill in the blank is a bad statement.
Yeah. All right. So that's her perspective, right? Like she's viewing these 2 male characters as friends that are strictly platonic. She goes on to talk about how in the writer's room, they're having all the same discussions that we are having in fandom about how these characters relate and, what their dynamic is, which is where the problem therein lies. If you are having these conversations and you know what the response is and you know how you intend these words and how they're being acted, how they're being edited, how they're being received, and don't do anything to change the words you're intending to match your intention in the perception, that's where we have a problem. And so my big takeaway from this article is there's a huge disconnect from the writer's room where they're saying, fuck it all to hell. We're going to write the stories the way we perceive them, the way we interpret them. And we expect you to take the same thing out of it. And we're not going to use your feedback to change it to tell the story we actually want to tell. And that, is a big takeaway from the article in my mind, that she's like, they're very good friends, and in a lot of ways they're family, and I think that's where they are right now. Those words don't mean what you think they mean, bestie. Hate to break it to you. So that's the article, right? Like, that's what we get. That's the information that came from the showrunners, how they perceive these characters, how they're interacting with fandom. Which sparked a lot of debate in the fandom in response to how Max presented this article and what the contents include. And I think this is a very important time to open the discussion to how do we interact with members of the press as fans? Because the obscene reaction that he is getting for writing direct quotes from the creators in a very well put together manner to create a strong article. All the backlash seems to be on Maxcow, and this is a problem. This is a problem. This is not how we treat members of the press. We do not attack them for giving you the information that you don't want. Like,
journalistic integrity is a thing.
Thank you.
And if Max Gow is a fan of the show, he understands what fans want to read, and he understands his obligation to report what he is given. Not create a piece that fans are going to enjoy, but report the information in a factual, logical, informative way. That's like rule number one of the press.
Right? So we spend so much time being like, we want the press to be, held to the standard. We want them to report the truth. But as soon as it's something we don't agree on, we're going to attack them. And so the response to his article isn't, oh, hey, like these creators of the show we love are so out of touch and don't understand how the media they're creating is being perceived and applying that feedback. Instead, people are going, oh, well, I can't believe this actor from the show or this actor from the show unfollowed you for this piece when they never followed him to begin with, which is not a requirement of him doing his job well. Like, he doesn't need to be followed by the actors to do a good job, right? And the fact that the response so many people had was, I can't believe you hyped this up. I can't believe this is the article you gave us. I can't believe this is how you're presenting this information, is not what I want to see as a fan in these spaces, because this is a human being who is doing a job talking about a piece of media that he very much enjoys and has been very much vocal about how he thinks Buddy can be a very interesting story and he would totally support it, right? Like, he's a fan of Buddy. He's been very open about that. To say, I can't believe you would do this to us is just so ridiculous. And I feel like I'm repeating myself. I'm just so frustrated.
No, you're allowed.
That fandom has grown so much over the years and has developed in these online spaces in a very particular way. And the way we interact with media and the way we react to how people are talking about media is so important to ensuring that the media we love gets better. it has improvements, makes the changes we want. And by attacking the press for reporting on the media we love, we are doing ourselves a disservice, because those people who are fans of the show, who are getting attacked for talking about shows they are a fan of, are going to stop picking up those pieces, are going to stop asking the questions we want them to ask because of the backlash they are getting. And overall, it's going to make our experience as fans worse, because nobody's asking the questions that fans want to hear the answers to.
I think that, like, I have a blanket opinion, which is that if you want okay, I'm gonna rewind and I'm gonna restart. It is to the benefit of your, as a fan, enjoyment of the media that you're a fan of, to do the bare minimum in learning journalistic integrity and PR relations, like public relations, and our ethical standards. Those are two different roles that play into the messages you hear about the media that you love. And they have very different roles and responsibilities. So I have a PR degree, so I've learned about this only from the PR perspective. I don't have a journalism background, but I'm a PR practitioner who has done editorial writing and journalistic work with the context I have. So when I'm a fan of media, this is why I'm able to do my series around like analyzing press tours, analyzing like Oscar media run-ups and themes and key messages and why things are being presented the way they are, because I have context around how those strategies are built and why they matter to us as fans. And I think you get, if you give yourself the benefit of like doing the bare minimum Googling to figure these things out and learning how the journalists that you love are able to make the work that you enjoy and able to cover media, and you're able to learn like how PR works and how key messages work and how showrunners have obligation to work with their media companies and with their show, like the owners of stations and the PR people that make their show possible to put out the messages that they want presented, you would be able to see for yourself just how intricate this all is and what a mistake is, like someone saying the wrong words at the wrong time versus a key message coming out and having to be reported about in that way that upholds journalistic standards and integrity. And to me, this is one of those perfect hot mess moments where there's not an understanding of those two pieces and people are taking it out, per se, on the wrong person in the equation. Like, Max has a job to do and can't misreport or misrepresent the quotes that he's given. Your reaction to that should not be taken out on someone doing their job properly, even if it is disappointing. If you want to direct your energy on something, and I think people are saying this in the chat, like that's when you go to the production. That's when you go to the show and you direct your criticism and what you would like to see there, because they're the ones that can hear that or choose not to hear it and act on it, which, Sly, you said very well. So now I'm just repeating what you've been saying.
And that's the thing. His article's great. It breaks down like all the key moments that people mention to come to the conclusion that they might have a deeper relationship. Like, it's a very well put together, pretty short article. Go check it out, read it, get some context for, exactly what he's saying here. But in general, we have to be more critical about how we think about journalistic media about media, because it's not like reporting on news and entertainment and reporting on news in like sports or politics is a very different environment, right? That's very wildly different styles of writing. And so you have to really focus on what the message is, who's saying it, and where it's coming from. And journalists are doing so much work for you, so much research to give you the most clear picture of a situation. And to take one line of that out of context and throw it around is doing a huge disservice to their work. Do we have any thoughts? before my final statement on this segment.
Alexis, do you want to chime in at all? You're good? Okay, go for it, Sly.
I am retracting my former statement. I have said publicly previously that I didn't need Buddy to become canon for me. Like, my enjoyment of Buddy as a couple is through my interaction with fandom, and that's where I find my joy and my appreciation of these characters interacting in that way. After these articles, I'm gonna say, fuck it, no, make them canon. Like, you have so much there to work with. You can structure such an interesting story. Like, I'm not asking for, 5B to be this, right? Deal with your trauma. 5B is the trauma arc of 911, of going to therapy and figuring your shit out. And we need that because we haven't seen that for the show so far. But the last episode, I think, is titled like Second Chances or something like that. I don't have it pulled up right now. But that could spark a really interesting, like, maybe Eddie comes out. Who knows? And then how I would do it if it was me. Season 6, let them be queer. Not together, let them be queer. Give Eddie Diaz a hoe face. Why not? He deserves it. He deserves it.
I heard that in like the, let them eat cake. Now how you say that, like let them eat cake. I hear you say let them be queer in the same kind of
let
tone.
them be queer, let them have a hoe phase.
Period.
And then we can revisit the idea of them being a relationship together in season 7, 8, whatever. We're not there yet. But after the comments from the showrunners showing how insanely out of touch the writer's room is with the fandom, I'm going to say, fuck it. I'm not sticking to my guns. I'm changing my point, and I'm saying Buddy needs to be canon. I retract all my former statements.
It's on the record here. We will hold you to that and see if that statement changes or adapts over the next few weeks.
Give Eddie a Buck 1.0 phase. He deserves it.
I feel like there's a lot more to dig into with controversy in the 911 fandom, so maybe we'll revisit a different angle of the conversation next week and as the story continues to unravel. I also know a lot of you watch 911, so perhaps we'll try and do a little 911 controversy roundup as much as we do, as much as we can over the next few weeks, because there's so much more we can unpack around different angles of controversy with all this and enjoyment of all of this. And with that said, I'm publicly committing to stopping watching only 15 minutes of an episode that I don't have any context around. I have decided the show deserves better than me tuning in when Sly has not watched and seeing like one thing happen with no context. So this is me publicly committing to stopping that toxic trait and actually finding time to watch the show properly. So, I wish that I had a more serious thing to talk about for my Under the Radar segment, but fortunately, it's been a bad week for Liz watching things and a great week for Liz reading and listening to things. Something I don't talk about a lot on this show is just how involved in music fandom I am in. So I finally put up my wall of some of my signed copies of things, and I finally put together my record station only to find out that my record player power cord is broken. So that was very sad. But I want to commit to talking more about it because I'm very involved in music communities. I'm involved in music TikTok. I follow all of the releases. Y'all know I'm a Taylor Swift fan. I'm following Harry Styles 3 like a hawk. I am on that shit. I'm going to be the first person to know when Harry Styles decides to do something next, because that's like one of my major life priorities right now is being ready for Harry Styles to come ruin my life once again with new music. But as I spent this week, like I mentioned off the top of the show, reading fanfic that has like completely like debunked my all-time #1 fanfic and has changed my entire thinking around how good fanfic can be, I've been building playlists. And if Marissa was still here, Marissa would tell you that my playlists are kind of next level. I went through the group chat earlier tonight to find some actual statements of what Marissa has said about my playlist, and she has called it what she called it, like music Adderall, the music equivalent of Adderall for when she's trying to get work done. She has texted me at all hours of the night being like, the only reason I'm still doing my paper, my assignment, my exam is because I have Bucky Barnes as a mirror ball on replay. So Marissa's testimony stands that I can make a mean playlist, and that is what I would like to pitch to you this week. If you are in the mood for some Marvel character-inspired music in your life, and you might be a Taylor Swift fan, then you would enjoy the following playlists. I'm going to post them in the YouTube chat now. There are 4 that I have built that I have gotten Marissa's seal of approval on, and Sly's and Alexis's, I think. One is Bucky Barnes is a mirror ball. That's the most popular one. We also do listening parties for this playlist on Station Head. It's the story of Bucky Barnes told through Taylor Swift music. I'll leave it at that. The second is Peter Parker inspired. Again, telling the story of Peter Parker in the MCU, specifically Tom Holland's Peter Parker, through Taylor Swift music. The third, which is my newest edition, which I've gotten rave reviews on, and I myself have fallen into the productivity rabbit hole listening to, is called The Bahamas of Hiding Places, which is about Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker, which Marissa texted me saying, when are we getting the Peter Parker playlist? And I had it done within, how long do you think it took me? Y'all are in the group chat. I think it was like 5 nanoseconds.
Very quickly.
It just came, like, it presented itself to my mind, and I just made it happen. So there's officially a Peter Parker, Andrew Garfield playlist. It's very sad, and there's some very good puns in the song titles and the placement of them. I'll let you figure it out later. And then the last playlist is one that
My favorite.
Sly's favorite. Sly's stamp of approval on this one. And I'm still tweaking with it. Okay, my playlists have to go through rigorous testing and Liz standards before I make them public, and I'm skipping ahead of myself to release this early because I know I trust y'all, and I think you'll enjoy it regardless of how it's currently fitting my standards. This is another Bucky-inspired playlist, specifically the Falcon and the Winter Soldier Bucky. So happy anniversary to the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and it's called "I Had a Little Calm. I just went from one fight to another," which is a reference to what he says when he's in his therapy session about being in Wakanda. Like, I had a little calm once in Wakanda, had to cut it down because there's only so many characters you can do for a playlist title. So that's what it became. So if you're looking for some Taylor Swift, some sad songs in your life, I got you covered. Those are the playlists. You can find me on Spotify at Producer Liz. And if Sly or anyone decides to duplicate them on Apple Music, let me know so we can plug the Apple Music links as well. I think Bucky Barnes as a mirror ball is on Apple Music. I'm not sure if any of the other ones are, but you have my permission to duplicate them on whatever streaming platform you would like.
I'm just waiting for the day that Liz texts the group chat that says, I have perfected, I had a little calm, and I will immediately duplicate it. I'm very excited. I'm very picky about my playlists when I'm listening to fan fiction. I have two playlists. That one is a Buddy playlist and one is a Tarlos playlist.
They're good playlists.
They're great.
They have my stamp of approval.
I will say I have listened to I Had a Little Calm while reading Marvel fanfic and 911 fanfic, and it held up for both.
I love to hear it. Where's my award for playlist builder of the year? I would like. Where's my Critics' Choice Super Award for best superhero inspired Taylor Swift Spotify playlist? Like that.
You deserve one.
Thank you.
Honestly.
Thank you. So if you listen, let me know. Slide into the Instagram DMs. I'm not open to criticism at this time. I'm kidding. But if there is a character that you would like a playlist built around, you let me know. I'm thinking when Loki comes back around, which I know is not for a long time, but I'm already thinking Loki season 2 needs some harsh love of a Taylor Swift playlist. I will not be doing a Doctor Strange playlist because I just have thoughts, but I'm thinking once Multiverse of Madness comes out, I will finally do the Wanda playlist because I'm not satisfied with her storyline, like where her storyline has currently ended. To build her a Taylor Swift playlist, it would be too sad. So we'll see what happens in Multiverse of Madness. Perhaps Wanda will go into her Reputation era, and perhaps a playlist will emerge from that. And that's what I'm pitching this week. Also, just in terms of what's on my radar right now, under the radar, this is going like way niche into Tumblr 2012 to 2017. But a staple in any fanfic playlist is a band called Amber Run. They're British. Sly is with me on this. They are kind of iconic in terms of fanfic relative music. There's a song that even if you don't know the band, I guarantee if you were on Tumblr, you've heard this song. It's called I Found. It's kind of an oldie at this point, but still holds up over time. But Amber Run has a new album coming out, which I'm very excited about. And I'm hoping that we're going to get some new staples that I can squeeze into some of these playlists. So I put that on your radar as well. And I'll let y'all know when that album drops, because I will be doing a listening party for it on Station Head. It will be on replay. I'm very excited about this. And the last thing I'm going to say is if there's any music that y'all follow or musicians that you want me to do some deep cuts around, let me know, because when Harry Styles drops, I will not be shutting up about that. When we get the next Taylor Swift announcement, I will not be shutting up about that. If this man, Lewis Capaldi, ever shows his face again, here, y'all want to know a fact that I don't know if I've ever actually said on this show?
What?
I made TikTok because I was going to see Lewis Capaldi. That's why I made my TikTok account in the first place, because he was playing at Osheaga, and this is when he was on TikTok and he was posting all the time. And I was making videos about his music and responding to him. And he's been like my number one on Spotify. Like I'm a big fan. And now he's completely disappeared into the abyss to write his second album. And he's not active on social media. And it hurts me deeply. So that's a Liz deep cut. Before I was even producer Liz, I was all about Lewis Capaldi on TikTok.
I don't follow music very often. Obviously, for obvious reasons. Not a
There
big
it
music
is.
person.
I've waited all night for one.
But I keep seeing TikToks about what's his face? Dean Lewis writing a sequel to Be Alright, and I can't wait for that to happen.
One of the saddest pre-pandemic concert experiences of mine is that we made a very spontaneous decision, like on a Wednesday, to drive 10 hours to a music festival, but we couldn't make it in time for his set.
Oh.
And I told myself it's fine because I'll see him at some point. And then the pandemic happened a few months later, or started, I should say, a few months later. So I have yet to see Dean Lewis, but yes, I am with you. Waves acoustic piano version and Waves acoustic guitar version are also staples on my fanfic sad song playlist. So maybe I should just make a playlist called fanfic sad song.
Staples.
Staples, exactly.
Yeah.
So that way everyone can just have the
What?
recommendations.
What were the standards? I was trying to think of the name for like the jazz songs in like the 40s that everybody knew. They were called standards. I got there eventually. English is hard.
You know what? And also I find terminology around music is always hard for me because I'm so deep in like movie and press tours right now that when I try and revert back to my music analyst brain, I'm like, I remember nada. I remember nothing of what's happening right now. Alexis, I know you're also a music fan, and if you don't know, Alexis has done shows in the background with her records on the wall. Is there anything that you're looking forward to, or anything that you're listening to right now that's worth noting? Also, hello to one of our two favorite cats, or three if we're including Alpine.
Yes. Well, what am I have a tendency to, shocking everyone, I have a tendency to listen to the same stuff over and over and over again. This week has been an All Too Well week. I've listened to that. I've kept time by the 10-minute version of All Too Well. And I was missing Marissa this week. So I listened to No Body, No Crime quite a bit, which is Marissa and that's our song. But no, like I haven't really listened to new music.
I also fell deep this week. I was feeling, if you don't know, Folklore, which is here on my wall. Folklore came out on my birthday, which means I'm obnoxious about the album. And I fell deep into illicit affairs, and My Tears Ricochet, just like ping pong back and forth. And then like I'd stop and listen to All Too Well 10-minute version and then like go back. But if I felt like I needed to break it up, it was like, I don't know why All Too Well was like the break. That's even more gut wrenching than.
Well, anyway. I did also listen several times, I think it was this week, to the song that Justin Bieber wrote that I thought was about unaliving people that Liz had to perform.
This is a good time.
Murder song.
Tell this story. This is a great story. Let's Yes, tell the story,
Okay.
Alexis.
So several weeks ago, I was driving home from work, and I have a really old car, so it doesn't have like a phone hookup. And so sometimes when I'm like just talking to myself, I put the radio on in the background, and it only like tunes to one radio station. It's our local like pop hit station, and it kept playing this song. Like every time I got in the car, I heard this song, and at the time I didn't even know who it was by, but they just kept saying like it's this really romantic song. And the lyric that I kept hearing was basically like, whatever it is, like, if I can't be with you, I'll settle for the ghost of you, however that goes. And to me, that sounded like, well, if I can't have you, no one can have you. So if I can't have you, I will unalive you and I will spend the time with your ghost.
Which
So
is,
then,
let's be clear, like when Alexis told us that's how she interpreted the song, we were all like, that is a very serious song to write. Like that is a very serious theme of a song.
yes.
But I'm going to interject here because that's not why we found it funny. We found this funny because if you're a regular viewer of the show, you know Alexis has a checklist. Sly, would you like to fill everyone in on what this checklist is?
Tall, has an accent, speaks multiple languages, dark floofy hair, and occasionally cardigans. And unalives people.
They're either academics or they're unalivers.
Or both, right?
Yeah.
So when Alexis says, is this what the song's about? Yes, that's a very serious interpretation, but it was very funny because it was like, of course you're going to interpret it that way on your first listen. Of course that's where your head's going to go because that's what you look for in the media that you watch. So we had to very politely be like, no. But the song is called Ghost of You. So it's a very fair assumption to make. Like, I completely understand how you got there. And if you go listen to that song now and think about this story, you might listen to it a different way. I've also heard it on the
Marissa was like, I'm going through the lyrics. He did unalive her. Like I told you. I stand by though. Okay, granted, like in my fictional world, that is a very romantic song, right? Like Garcia Flynn singing to me that if no one can have me, he's going to unalive me and himself and we're going to be ghosts. That's highly romantic. I'm fine with that. But what was like so funny about it was I was like, I can't see the radio thinking that was a romance song. But I still think it's a better song if he unalived her. Like I think this like
it
sweet
seems like
little like
if
la,
that
la,
was the
la.
intent of the song, I feel like it should be the title like soundtrack song for Fresh. Again, I'm going off of having never watched the movie and only Sly's review, but am I wrong?
That's a fair interpretation is all I'll say. I don't know if I would go that far. But I'm not gonna yuck your yum there.
Very politically correct. Yes. So we will not be using that song in our playlist. I think is like the final statement on that.
We'll put it on our Unalivers playlist
Right after No
There
Body,
are
No
also
Crime.
sometimes, yes, that I just send Liz voice memos of that song playing on the radio.
Yeah, Alexa sent me a voice message. Was it? I think it was this week, or maybe it was last week. I don't know. And I was playing it, and I was like, "Oh, I think this was like a mistake. Like, I think like not like butt out because it was like a voice message from like this must be a mistake." And then I got to like 3 seconds left in it, and I was like, "Oh, that's why she's sending it to me. Like, no words, just the song on the radio, but like scratchy because it's coming from her car radio, and she's recording on her phone." Yeah. And then I tried to take it came on the radio while I was pulling into my parking spot. So I tried to take a voice memo of it playing on the radio once I was parked. But then my phone hooked up to my car speaker. So all you heard was the beeping of me reversing. And I was like, I'm not going to be trying that again. Yeah. So our final note to end the show on. It's the anniversary of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And if you want to know what we think of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, you can go back and rewatch our episode that we did at the start of January where we ranked all of the projects from last year. I want to toss it to Alexis because you ranked that show. Was it number 1 on your list? Was it number 2 on your list? It was pretty high.
It was up there somewhere.
I think it
I
might have
had
been
it
your
pretty
number
high.
one. Yeah. You had it high too, Sly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we appreciate that show. Oh my god, I don't know what
I will
combo
say
of words. Yeah.
most of my love for the show is because wanting to watch it is the reason I watched a majority of the MCU movies. Is I didn't want to go into this like I went into WandaVision with no context. So I watched all the caps and most of the Avengers movies, notably leaving out the first Avengers movie, which I watched much later. Very good movie, fun fact. But
Good.
the
It's
show
good,
kind
yeah.
of sparked my start of watching the MCU movies.
I love that. Alexis, you have always been a fan of this show, I think.
I mean, it's not without its problems, but I am a big Bucky Barnes person, and honestly, I adore Sam Wilson. So any show that was going to feature the two of them was going to be a show that I enjoyed, and I loved Sarah. I thought Sarah was just like the coolest. So yeah, it loses points for me for not featuring Alpine, but I really like some of the stuff that it did.
Definitely not a show without its problems, not an era without its problems. It was a very heavy time for the MCU community, especially on TikTok and on Twitter. However, it did give us a lot that we can look forward to, including Sam Wilson as Captain America. Spoiler if you haven't watched the show a year later. I'm gonna roll my eyes when I say that because if we need to give spoilers, I don't know why you're still watching our show that's an hour and a half long. But I think that it gave us some much needed Sam Wilson appreciation. And I think that we as a community still sleep on how much we got out of Sam in that show that I don't know. Like I went back and I was rewatching like Ant-Man when he was in Ant-Man, and like I was rewatching some of the other appearances that he's made over time, and I was like, damn, Sam Wilson was not multidimensional. Like at all. Like the Sam Wilson that was in my head going into that show was like fanon Sam Wilson, not just comic Sam Wilson, because as y'all know, I'm not the comics expert here, but it was the fans' reaction and character and appreciation of him and how much people like Anthony Mackie as opposed to what the MCU had actually constructed of Sam Wilson up until that point. So I think that it was so nice to actually give a character that level of depth and proper, at times, somewhat adequate backstory. And we'll maybe leave it there. It also gave us some great memes. Marissa's back to say Sam Wilson appreciation post. Yes. I also think that's a show that over time I grew to appreciate it more. I agree with this comment in the chat about how episode 5 is one of the stronger episodes that came out of Disney Plus and Marvel. I would agree with that. And I want to talk about the memes because like this show really gave us some fabulous moments that like obviously we still reference to this day. Marissa, the queen of Bucky with the cake, obviously that's still living because of Marissa's heroic efforts to keep it relevant. And I'm grateful for that effort. Sly, I know there's a meme that you love that came out of the show.
So I will caveat. I also appreciate them frolicking in the fields, staring longingly into each other's eyes, just because it's so gay. My favorite meme for the show was I read The Hobbit in 1937 when it first came out.
I often think about like something that line made me think about that, like, we will never get an answer on this. This would be like a Tumblr post I would make if Tumblr was what it was back in the day. Like, does Bucky ever think about how much money he could make off of his possessions that he had in 1937? Like, if he read the first edition of The Hobbit, like, if he still has that somewhere, like, what else did he have? Like, what books did he have that people would pay a lot of money for, or, like, want access to that, like, were just in his normal life, like, pre-Winter Soldier?
How much of his life was confiscated by museums is where my brain went.
That too.
There's a fic that I love that's set up on the idea that like, he gets deferred pay for all the years he's on ice. So literally the whole plot is like, let's find a house with like 100 years of deferred pay. And there's also a great fic. I'll have to look up the title. I'll post it on my Instagram. Come find me after. But it's about what like Hydra stole from him and how Natasha ends up coming across it later, like before she really knows him. And so she ends up like learning who he is through all of these random possessions that through Pierce come into Shield's possession, and then meets him and eventually has to say, well, no, I knew all these things about you because I read like 50 letters that your sister sent you that you never got. It's just really kind of interesting to think of those parts of the story. I think one of the things...
Wait. I have a question.
Yeah.
And if you're in the comments, if you want to play along, please do. But for the three of us right now, based on what's currently around you, what would people assume about your life? Like, if Natasha was learning about Bucky via, like, the stuff that he left behind or whatever, like, I'm looking around thinking, oh my God, what would people assume about me based on, like, the things I have around me? I have way too many Taylor Swift records, not just the CDs I have an obnoxious number of CDs that I've been collecting since she first put out CDs. But I think people would be like, yikes, you spent a lot of money on the same, like you have the same album, but like 7 copies of it. Like are you okay? And you stream it. Are you good? I think that's worrisome. But what's around you two right now, Pat?
I have 3 things, right? I have both my current gen consoles in boxes. Not hooked up, not set. I have an Xbox Series S and a PS5 in boxes. I have a lot of various drugs on my desk currently.
Legal drugs.
Legal drugs. They're all over the counter or prescription. And then I have 2 categories of books. I have very young children's books on my bookshelf from my childhood, and then I have like adult books, and I don't have any of like my middle grade YA, etc., because I lost all those when I lost all my possessions in a fire a while back. So I only have like child books or very adult books and nothing in between.
I love that. It's like someone might assume there's like, oh, like, is there a child that you read these books to? It's like,
no, just me.
Alexis, what do you got?
This is a range. I have What Would Blair Waldorf Do pencils. I have a dino and his ice cream.
Oh, that's cute. Whoa. We can't just brush over that.
Yeah, this is Dino.
Very
for
cute.
The company I teach for, and he eats ice cream. This is his ice cream. And I also, this is my office. So I have my In Case I'm Unalived and Someone Needs to Start a Podcast book where I keep all of my records, and I have to get new fingerprints for it. So I have this nice fingerprint card sitting on my desk.
That's like the most Alexis thing I've ever heard in my life. I feel like
I saw someone do it on TikTok, so I decided to do it. And
I saw that TikTok too. Yeah. I feel like Alexis, if you don't follow Alexis on Instagram, this is your moment too, because you do really wonderful photos. Like you actually stage photos for your Instagram, which I think is really cool. I don't have that talent. I can't do that. So I always appreciate when you do it. But what they do make me think of is that you're also being very prepared for someone to one day be like, what did they mean? Like in this one, she's eating ice cream. And in this one, she has like a knife. How do they connect? And it's like, I'm not really sure if you're thinking that deep, but you're definitely setting it up for someone to someday. Maybe your like long in the future descendant's going to be like, my great-great-grandmother's Instagram account leaves us much to consider.
There's a game coming out soon that I've been very excited for. It's called Chinatown Detective Agency. And the game, you're like a detective and you have to solve all these puzzles, right? But you have to use outside resources. You have to like Google like ancient stamps, whatever. Very fun. Anyways, the point of that is I need Alexis to write a mystery book but with clues that are answered via her Instagram
My
post.
Instagram.
Your Instagram feed holds clues to reference in the mystery novel. That's what I need.
I'm
in my life.
begging. I'm literally begging. Okay, we shouldn't have said that on the show because now we need to go copyright that idea.
Yeah.
So Alexis can do it. I'm begging for that.
Give me a couple months and I'll whip something up for you.
Beautiful. The other things that I have around me, I'm trying to find where I put one of them and I just can't right now. But I have two lovely friends that made me passive aggressive embroidery. One's on my wall. And it's a nice big square and it says, nevertheless, she persisted, which is from that political thing that happened a few years ago, which when it happened, I was like, yeah. So they made a nice embroidery of it. And then the other one that I have, which I can't find, which I really want to show, is a circle. And it's got beautiful flowers. It's like very, very elegant. And it says, per my last email, and then gives the middle finger.
Incredible.
And I feel like someone would see those and be like, the look does not match the message. Like, that's a very pink flower beside a middle finger. Like, let's like consider this. And then the other thing that I have a lot of right now, because I've been reorganizing the stuff I take with me when I travel, I have all of my like emergency alarms and door stoppers and like all of those types of travel things out. So I feel like that's also, there's a suspicious way that they're like just around right now because I'm reorganizing. And I feel like if you walked in with no context, you'd be like, you've got a lot of alarms. Like, you have many alarms that you travel with. So those are my other two objects, but I don't have them to show you there. I'm looking at them going, oh yeah, that's interesting.
I am looking at the two Chelsea Clinton children's books that were written based on the Nevertheless She Persisted.
Are they good?
Yeah, they're very good. Yeah. One is about like American women and one is about women globally.
Very
things
cool.
they've accomplished.
Very cool. I would like to write, nevertheless, they persisted, but it's text from our group chat about moments when we've all been in crisis, but then like, JK, it's fine. Like the amount of times, if you don't know, I am like the latest in time zone of the four of us. So there are many mornings where I wake up and have to decipher like 60 texts where it's like crisis,
also,
very bad.
Many times that I wake up to a text from Liz at 4 a.m. my time.
Yeah.
It's true. We're all over it. Like you get it one way and I get it the other way. But I wake up many times like I'm like scrolling up, right? So I'm reading them in backwards order and it's like ending with everything's fine. But I get more and more worried as I figure out what's been happening while I've been asleep, to the point where it's like I get to the top and it's like, oh, like severe, like category 5 level injury. Not sure if I'll be okay. And everyone's like, oh my God. And then it's like receiving care. Oh my God. Like, oh, everything's fine. And my doctor looks like this character from a TV show. And it's like,
literally this week, everything's fine. I'm really pissed no one in the ambulance looked like Gordon Vishnick. I'm injured. I may be dying. Like, literally.
And then it was completely fine like a few hours later. And it was like, here's photos of my cat.
Yeah.
But for me, I see the cats first. And I'm like, oh, everything's great. And then I'm like,
oh no.
I need
I'm
like
still a little feisty over it.
You can change your do not disturb settings to be like, when you receive like a text from this person, like it goes off through your do not disturb. I feel like I need to figure out a way to get my Liz important texts to like wake me up in the night, because there's been so many nights from all of you, from all you two and Marissa, where I've woken up and been like, someone should have awoken me. This is like, I would have liked to have known this was happening. Anyway, a little
Meanwhile, so all of our Liz important texts are like very like serious, like business or personal, whatever, very important. And then my Alexis important TikTok texts are, here's the TikTok of 3 people dancing West Coast swing together.
Yeah.
It's like
The
category
vibes.
5, category 4, category 3. Like a category 5 is a Liz important. Like Liz, you gotta get in here. Like Liz, like you gotta get in here. Alexis is like a category 1. It's like we found.
I know. I got that message and I was like, "Oh my gosh, what is the crisis?" And I was like, "Oh no, Sly just finished that fic I sent them. It's fine."
I feel like what's our definitive ranking here? I feel like Liz important is like
Liz
a
is a 5.
catastrophic. Yeah.
Yeah. Alexis important, it's the bottom.
Yeah.
I feel like
And then I think Sly is like the
I'm
level
really
below
middle.
me. Yeah, like you're in the middle.
Like if you're having a crisis and need somebody to be like, it's fine. Everything's fine.
Again, going back
That's-
earlier in the show, you're our gauge, you're our range for everything. So you're the level below Liz. And then it's Marissa.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitive ranking
Definitive
of
ranking.
who we go to in a crisis.
And which crisis calls for which
Or what the
person.
crisis type we go to the people for.
Yeah, that's so funny. Okay, we've reached the end of our show. There's a lot more we wanted to talk about, but we are out of time. So we will revisit next week with more about Morbius, more about Moon Knight, more about Miss Marvel, some of the other pieces we wanted to talk about with Miss Marvel and the comics history. Probably talk about 911 next week. Probably talk about some award season stuff next week, so we get closer to the Oscars coming. Excuse me.
I will have lots to say about the Angela
may
Bassett
actually talk about
on
Bucky.
Lone Star crossover. I cannot wait. It's everything I ever wanted. I can't wait for Monday. Monday's gonna be a good day, y'all.
It's going to be a good day to be Sly on Monday. Alexis, what were you saying?
I said next week we may actually talk about Bucky.
Yeah, we might, I feel like it was wrong to try and talk about Bucky without Marissa. Like, I just feel
Without
in my heart,
Marissa.
we
It's
can't-
weird to have like a
Yeah.
happy birthday Bucky moment. And
and it's weird to talk about the show that like Marissa keeps iconic in my heart. Like Marissa's the one that drives that train forward for me with the meme constantly. But we do have an announcement to make.
We do.
We do. This has been weeks in the making. This is longer than weeks. I think it's been a long time in the
It's
making.
been at least a month or month and a half.
It's been a long
somewhere
time.
up there.
Next week, and I'm so sorry to announce this for all of our regular viewers, everyone that's been along this journey with us, who's been so supportive, who's really believed in Stark Radio. Next week, we will be saying farewell to Stark Radio officially forever. And we'll talk more about what that means next week. But it's an era that is coming to a close. And we're very grateful for everyone that has supported Stark Radio, that has been a fan of Stark Radio. We're going to talk about some of our favorite Stark Radio memories. We're going to talk a lot about how Stark Radio came to be and why Stark Radio was the direction that, got us to this point. And we'll be saying farewell to it forever. It's going to be very emotional. Stark Radio has gotten us through almost a whole year of content. It's the reason why I found community on TikTok. It means a lot to all of us. So we're going to be saying goodbye to Stark Radio next week. So if you have been a fan of the show, if you've been a fan of Stark Radio, the series, or on Station Head, make sure you tune in and help us bid farewell.
We're throwing a funeral. Come join us.
We are. And the eulogy will be better than Miss Sharon Carter's. That's all I'm going to say. I can't say enough bad things about it. I got to stop. Anything else you want to say on that note?
I just very, very honored to be a part of this.
Oh, you're gonna make me cry. Shut
I
up.
love you all. I can't wait to see what will come for all of us. But in the meantime, we're gonna have a party. It's gonna be a fun funeral. Come join us.
We are going to have a party. We're going to have a party next week. And then we'll see what happens when the party's over. And see where we go when the party ends. There's lots of places you can go when a party ends. Maybe we'll talk about that next week. And with that, let's end our before I keep talking. I'm producer
And
Liz.
with that, we're all gonna go cry.
Love
Love
your
you.
cry. Make sure you tune in next week. We have so much to tell you about during our funeral and during our party of what Stark Radio has been. So don't make too many assumptions. Come back next Saturday night. Marissa will be back with us. For now, I'm producer Liz. You can find me on TikTok and on Instagram. We share all the details for the show on Instagram stories first. You can tell that this week we did not have Marissa because Marissa's usually the one that remembers to post it. I posted it 2 hours ago. Usually Marissa gets it up a few days early. So Marissa will be back next week and we'll make sure we get those stories up so you know when the next show's happening. You can set a countdown, turn reminders on. I'm going to be sharing some content over the next week around Andrew Garfield, what we can expect heading into the Oscars. I'm back in my skit era. I used to do skits a lot on TikTok, and I've made a few Oscars themed skits around press. So I'm excited to release those next week. And yeah, I'll post more playlists if y'all want to DM me for the playlist links or for the fanfic link that has completely ruined the last week of my life. Feel free to do so, and I will share. Sly?
You can find me everywhere on the internet at CycloneMC. You can find me yelling about video games and non-MCU Marvel movies on Point in Progress. And Liz is re-entering the skit era. I think I have a video that's been in the back of my brain that's gonna be a little controversial, and I think I might bite the bullet, and so you might see that from me this week.
Hey,
No promises.
controversial Sly. Let's see it. Alexis.
I'm at Alexis Blake Reads Comics. You can find me on TikTok and Instagram, occasionally on Twitter, but not really. And my cats got their own Instagram account this week, and I have
Very
been
good.
judging everyone based on how quickly they followed my cats. So some of you have done very well. Some of you,
Some
of you don't follow my cats.
I followed
One of-
instantly as soon as I
Sly
saw
followed
that.
instantly.
I followed.
I had drafted up a lot of messages about how that's reflective of our marriage. Liz still doesn't follow my cats.
I have been reading fan fiction for 6 days straight. I cannot be held accountable to what did not get done this week.
Grace at Bucky's ex-wife followed my cats and then individually sent me each picture and her opinion about it. So she's also up there. But yes, they are at Tommy and Sassy Blake, and I will post that on my Instagram again so people can go follow them, Elizabeth. And
I've been told.
and that's that.
And we'll plug Marissa, even though Marissa's not here. Marissa is Missa Bo Bissa everywhere, especially on Twitter, where you can find Marissa popping off about everything all of the time. And Marissa is going to put out a video that we have seen, which is great. And I don't think she's posted it yet, so I'm not going to spoil what it is. But Marissa is infamous for her hot takes, and she's done the hot takes on the show about hair in the MCU. And there is a very highly requested episode of Hair in the MCU coming very soon to Missa Bobissa on TikTok. So make sure you are watching for that. Also, Marissa got a haircut this week, so you should go compliment her. She looks great.
Beautiful, beautiful Marissa.
Love it. And on that note, we're going to say goodnight to TikTok first because there's always a delay with the other streams. So goodnight, TikTok. We'll see you next Saturday night for our big show. Okay. And we're going to say goodnight to YouTube and Twitch. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next Saturday for the big show, the big farewell. I'll be wearing a black dress. I'll be ready to throw a party.
Are we gonna dress up? I can bust out my blazer.
Oh. I'm so excited. Love it. Yes, it's gonna be a party. So if y'all watching also want to pour yourselves a drink, wear your little party dress, wear a little,
your funeral dress.
Your funeral.
Wear your funeral dress.
I
will be coming in my veil.
Send us a pic on Instagram. I think you need to dress like Bucky at Tony's funeral. That's the energy going into next week, people. Well, I have to shut up now because I can't say anymore. I am very much looking forward to spending next Saturday with you all. And I hope that you will come and bring your friends, and we will be sharing more details over the next few days, trying to tell people that the show is happening. So we appreciate your support always. Like, subscribe, follow, whatever, on whatever platform you're watching on, and we will see you next week. Bye.